see you.
Is this okay? Now we got a little faint applause there.
That's
Not
fair.
because of Nykia, but because of what's behind your name. And I think you and I should try to, well, one, introduce you to our community.
Yes.
And by the way, I know this is one of your first public appearances in a setting like this, right? At NAR or no?
Not at NAR, but certainly at Inman.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I really am grateful for that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. And I think you and I should have as a goal that faint applause will turn into a rousing applause when we're done, okay?
We'll work on that.
I'm on your side. I'm gonna
Okay.
work with you, okay? So, how long you been in the job?
14 months.
As a temporary executive, and then you were appointed full. How did that work?
Yes, interim executive in, what was that, October 31st of 2023. I know that because that was my father's birthday. No, but it was also the day that the verdict came down. So there was a lot of introduction to what was happening with NAR, not only with people in this room, but certainly with me taking on the interim role. And then I became permanent in August.
Wow. And so now you've been in the saddle for five months.
I've been in it since November of 2023, really understanding the underlying challenges of the business, but permanent since then. But I never had the idea that I was just there as a placeholder. Even if you are a placeholder, that's not how you sort of operate the business. You have to make sure that you are continuing to push the business forward every single day.
You know, what impressed me in spending some time with you and talking the last couple of days is you're very nuts and bolts, and you're not, there's been so many over-affected personalities, and God, we don't know what they're saying or thinking or doing, and you seem like you've come in to accomplish a mission that's not full of a bunch of lofty goals, but to straighten out the financials. Tell us about that. Because your style is nuts and bolts. You're a turnaround artist. You
Absolutely.
have a great reputation, and you've got a big turnaround here. Tell us how you're thinking about that.
Yes, and so one of the, I think, challenges in communicating who I am and what I do is a lot of people have said, well, you didn't come from the real estate background. Well, I would argue that there are tons of professionals in the space that can actually drive that. Every executive that comes in, I think, is important because they are an executive for that time. The time period that I came in did not require me understanding the real estate landscape. It required me coming in to make sure that I could help take the business forward and turn it around. I helped pull the Chicago Sun-Times from the brink of extinction and irrelevance, and I was brought in to help continue to do that with NAR. Certainly you all know what was happening around the 2023 timeframe, a lot of things, and being in Chicago, NAR headquartered in Chicago, a lot of my CEO colleagues did not know that NAR was headquartered in Chicago. And so understanding what the brand meant both at the local level but also at the national level was super important, and then coming in to help transform the culture, coming in to help transform the business, understanding what our role is or what our role should be in the future is something that we continue to manage every single day.
I remember reading on your history at the Sun-Times, which is a great newspaper, you know. I mean, that was a business I've always been in. I love that newspaper. But you had a story where you found something in the budget. It was one of those classic, this doesn't make sense. Why are we doing this? And someone gave you an answer. Do you remember that anecdote? I wish I could remember.
No, but I think there were a lot like that. When I tell people what is the difference between a turnaround executive and a typical regular executive, sometimes you have 6 days when someone else has 6 months to make a decision. And so you are really having to lean in on your business instinct, understand exactly what the issue is, be able to problem solve super quickly. One of the more popular ones I think that you might be referring to is we had a call center for all of our subscribers in Chicago, and it was in Mexico. And we were paying $750,000 for that account. It made absolutely no sense. Our clients were not happy. They did not understand the language barrier, and so it did not make sense for the business, and economically or even socially as it respect to keeping clients. So I didn't know what we were going to do, but I had to pull it. Yeah. I knew that there were other options stateside. I just had to quickly go and find those options stateside. But that was the instinct of saying, this doesn't make sense. This contract is about to be up, but we've got to get rid of it because I know that there are better examples stateside.
Well, I got to imagine when you jumped into this budget, you found some ridiculous expenditures. I know there was probably a constituency that wanted to keep it, but someone was suggesting I ask you, the number of subsidiary companies that NAR has formed, like as people that are paying the dues and paying for this going, what is this about? And I'm sure with each little one, there's some advocate or someone that's served by it, but are you digging into all of those things? I mean,
So we are, and if you don't mind, I'll just amend that. What I think you were interviewing a CEO earlier this week, and she said that she read the book, What Got Us Here Won't Get Us There. I agree with that. And so while I won't sort of co-sign on the ridiculousness of the budget, it was a budget that made sense for yesterday. Mm-hmm. As we continue to go forward, we are looking to make sure that we understand what makes sense for today and tomorrow. And tomorrow is getting here very fast. It's changing. All of the executives that have been here this week have really talked about how they are picking their spots. And so the onus is on NAR to figure out how we are going to continue to be relevant and meet those needs. The budget of yesterday was different. The budget of today is much more constrained, as everyone in here knows. We have a significant settlement to pay, and so I think we are being a bit more judicious, cautious as it relates to how we will be spending monies going forward. And then I want to touch on the subsidiary piece. I don't know of a big number of subsidiaries, and maybe I need to go back and look at the financial statements, but we've only got a couple of subsidiaries, and those are companies that we think, at least in the current form, continue to make sense for the business. What we are trying to do as we go forward is we will win the day by being transparent. And so even my leadership style is I'm as transparent as I possibly can be without going over my fiduciary duty. And so to the extent that we are opening up our budgets, we're letting people know how we are spending our monies, we're letting people know where we are coming back, taking those monies back where they did not make sense. Does it make sense over the next year or two to do zero-based budgeting, to really start from scratch? Absolutely. As you can imagine, over the last 14 months when we were considering whether or not we would settle or file for bankruptcy, there wasn't enough time to start from scratch with the zero-based budgeting process. But that is something that we are continuing to look at to make sure that that transparency flows through the entire organization and ecosystem where people can feel comfortable.
Well, by the way, that is fantastic because there is this general view, at least from where I sit, and journalists, we don't get access to everything, but it was just full of secrets, by this small group of people, and there wasn't transparency in that organization, and that was one reason I think it lost a lot of credibility. And then when the shit hit the fan in the last couple of years, people, who before would never question NAR began to really, really question what the heck's going on there. So transparency, I think, will go a long way for you. So
yes, and even the former acting secretary ahead of me, she said it differently, but it's something that I believe every legacy institution in this country is under siege and needs to rethink their business model. And if they are not, they will be like the Chicago Sun-Times, where someone will have to come in and pull them from the brink of extinction. I will say that my colleagues, the leadership team, and a lot of the leaders at NAR are trying to make sure that that does not happen. I don't know what the cadence was for people to talk to leaders prior to when I got there, but I'm on the phone 6-7 times per week with the leadership team. The soberness that is being brought to today and the challenge that we have today, not one person is taking that for granted. And so while I can't speak about my predecessor, I do know that the reason that I signed on to be permanent is because I was very comfortable that people were really about solving problems.
Well, speaking of transparency, the former CEO is still getting paid a fortune, I understand. Is that the kind of stuff you can go in and rewrite those contracts, or is that?
Two things. One, that is not my understanding.
Okay.
And two, his leaving was prior to my getting to NAR.
And you're not focused on that?
I'm not privy to that information or focused on that at all.
And let's talk about, did they give you the authority, and companies, turnarounds, this role in other institutional settings, and it's so important that a board give the CEO the power to do the things so they're not constrained.
Yes.
That doesn't mean the board doesn't have a role, but I think volunteer leadership, the impression, again, we all sit on the outside with a lot of lack of transparency, that there's a small group of people driving the ship, and I think the CEO's vested, but do you have all the power you need to really turn this around?
I have the power to turn this around within the context of the Constitution and bylaws. And that was long, but let me be very clear there. Because, for example, I am a member of the leadership team. I can add value to the leadership team. There are so many stakeholders whereby there are some areas where I am not voting on specific things. My job and my fiduciary duty is to the institution. My job, my fiduciary duty is to the staff to make sure that we are setting up programs and initiatives that are meeting today and tomorrow. When you think about the volunteer leadership that has been formed over decades, these are actually the practitioners. And I do think that the decision-making bodies should lie within the practitioners. Now, how large that is, how many people that is something that is continuing to be debated over time. But my job is to regain confidence through the strategic initiatives that we're actually implementing every single day.
I'll tell you something refreshing. Often when there's a private company, even some of the trade associations, the CEOs have a gaggle of support people, and they're telling the people that work with Inman what questions we can ask from the stage and how we should ask them, and even telling us, which I ignore, completely ignore. I put it on the confidence monitor, but I don't actually. You were like so open to just getting up here, and your people were good in preparation, which they should be, but you were so open and willing to just have a straight up conversation. And I can't tell you how refreshing that is, where I sit. And
oh, I appreciate that, thank you.
And I know it'll mean a lot to these people, but let's continue. Someone here told me about the subsidiary, so we should just clarify that. It may have been a different word that they gave me. Are you shaking up the executive team?
I am putting the best people in the best spots to win this war.
Let's go, Coconut.
Yeah.
But you've already made some changes.
Yes.
Just through attrition and other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And attrition's the gift to a turnaround CEO, right?
Oh my gosh. So I have a mentor, and I was having lunch with him when I was at the Chicago Sun-Times, and I was really beat down. And I looked at my Apple Watch that day, and I got an email because the auditors were there, and I got several resignations, and I looked down at my Apple Watch where I was getting the resignations, and I said, oh my gosh, I'm getting these resignations. And he said, well, look at it this way. You don't have to pay severance. So there you go.
Love that one. Any CEO knows that one. Said well. Okay, now let's talk about another perception. Not only the sprawling bureaucracy with 2 subsidiaries or however many this gentleman over here told me there are. This board of directors, how many board members did you have at the Sun-Times?
12.
And you now have 1,200 at NAR?
No, don't go too far. Let's be accurate here. So, and I also want to describe that a little bit. So when I say board of directors, I'm talking about a typical board of directors that most people at publicly traded companies or even private institutions have, and that body is generally 8 to 12 people. That is what is our LT. So our leadership team, so the Kevin Sears and others of the world. And so when I think of board, even though we have a board that has 1,045, not to be confused with 1,200, but hold on just a moment, hold that. A subset of that,
error.
Absolutely, thank you. But let's round down and be accurate here. Then you have the executive committee, but a subset of that is really the leadership team, and that's who I interact with in the same way that I would what I've interacted with at the Chicago Sun-Times or any other board that I've been on.
Yeah, but when the Sun-Times had a annual, I guess you had shareholder meetings, so there'd be shareholders. So I guess that's maybe similar to the board.
Yes.
Kind of, yeah.
Yes, I would say that our board of directors is really one of the sort of the subset of the most engaged body within the nation, from all sorts of brands around the country that have a vested interest to ensure that their voice is heard and that we are continuing to maintain the integrity and transparency of the ecosystem, as well as making sure that agents are continuing to have the professions that they have.
Now, I know you know this, but you made a move in the last couple of weeks, it was announced, that this community loved to hear, and that is one of the great supporters of Inman over many, many years and never stopped, is Sherry Chris. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people felt very strongly, my gosh, we have someone, a reformer, but a very strong personality. helping you. That was a good move. How do you feel about it? Is she
Oh,
going to survive
I'm thrilled
after a
about
couple
it.
weeks?
Oh my gosh, the question is,
She
am I
hasn't
going
screwed
to
up or
survive?
anything? Okay.
No, she's incredible. But my leadership team and I are making moves like that consistently. As we talk about the state and local side, we've got another heavy hitter by the name of Jared Grasso, who's the former CEO, soon to be former CEO of the New Jersey State Association. So what are we trying to do? Sherry is a former, very reputable CEO. CEOs need to be able to talk to CEOs. When I think about a turnaround, the biggest obstacle that is always existing is time. And so I have to ask myself, how do I hack time? I can't talk to these stakeholders. I don't have the relationship with the stakeholders in the way that NAR should. Whether that's a conspiracy of circumstance or design, we are where we are. But she is actually helping me hack time by getting the meetings set up, really hearing some of the feedback, and helping us move forward. Jared will be able to do that on the state and local level. I've elevated a couple of our best and brightest internally to EVP status to really sort of take on some of the other responsibilities that my predecessor had, but that do not make sense for me for the moment. We are looking at bringing in more practitioners. If you think about the average business, and when I look at a turnaround, that's probably 15 years of doing something that probably is not meeting the moment. This did not happen yesterday. This did not happen overnight. And so my job is to continue to hack time by bringing in the best and brightest in talent. And talent is the only way to get us out of this.
It's everything, right? Let me ask you this. Clear cooperation. But before we get to that, how are you going to pay the settlement?
Looking at financials every single day, the first $200 million is due on 2/24, which is in a few short weeks. We are getting the money ready to do that, and then we have $72 million over the next 3 subsequent years. It is our job to be transparent, managing our budget and seeing exactly where we will continue to be able to make the payment. What is interesting is the static number, for example, that we use was based off of membership count. If that changes, then we have to continue to change very quickly. And so I have dashboards that are created for me where I know at any given time what our situation is and how we're thinking about it. The onus, heavy is the head that wears the crown, and so I've given the crown to several people within the organization to also continue to think about this, but we are leaving no stone unturned. We understand the responsibility that we have, and that is a continual conversation that we have to have every single day.
It would seem to me that some of the people, I called it the honeypot yesterday, that feed off that system should stop feeding off it so some of that money can go to pay off the settlement. What I would hate to hear is that you're increasing dues for people that are having a really tough housing market. Is that going to happen, a dues increase?
Oh, so that's certainly not, that's one of those things that, again, is not my responsibility to make. I show the data, and it's the leadership team and the other practitioners within the industry. The best that I can say is we're doing everything that we can. We are still in dues billing season, so I don't know what that final number is in order to be able to confidently say what the next tier is. But I know that you and Emily and others will be reporting on that before I know about it. So,
promise to do that.
Yes.
Well, I feel like I'm sometimes a representative of the people in my audience. I'm up here to ask the questions they want to ask. I would say, do everything you can not to increase these people's dues.
I can promise you that is what I'm. I can promise you that is exactly what we are thinking about every single day.
And then the last one, clear cooperation. Just a little twist to this magnificent debate that we love in the news business is yesterday. I think it was Ryan Serhant said, "Wait a second, this could force the indemnify us, or there could be another massive lawsuit."
I saw his segment, yes.
Yeah, what do you think of that whole, clear cooperation, NAR is solidly behind it, right?
So this is another thing. I think it's super important also here. I keep going back to my fiduciary duty, and I hope that people do not think that they got the short end of the stick and did not come here and get some inside information. From a fiduciary duty perspective, I think it's super important that we continue to go through the stage gates and the bodies that will make this decision. I think it would be a terrible dereliction of duty if I were to announce something. First of all, it's information that I don't have, but announce something or signal something where people in this room could possibly take advantage of it, but people outside of the room could not. This is a very competitive landscape, and I think we need to respect that and people's business models in order to do that. That said, we understand, again, what time it is, and so we are working through all of the stage gates to get to a resolution very quickly. I had the privilege of listening to many of the arguments, and of course we have been hearing all sides of the debate, most recently from the governing bodies and the advisory councils. There is that other dimension, which is also the Department of Justice, and so this is a very complicated thing. And while I can't answer exactly what we are doing right there, one, because I don't know, but two, would not be able to breach my fiduciary duty. The other piece that I want people to understand is I think this is what I would consider a test case for how we think about future rules and risk management. Now, you didn't ask about that, but I think it's super important for everyone to understand that we've hired one of the top law firms in the country. We've been working with them for the last few months, several, I think, because few signifies 3. So more like 5 or 6 months, working with them to look at all of our rules and understand exactly where we are from an antitrust perspective. We are not waiting till each pitch comes to decide what we are going to hit. We are looking at it in its totality. We're also looking at risk management from a perspective of what happens if this particular suit is settled. How does that manage itself through the entire ecosystem? If this is not settled, what does that do for the entire portfolio of rules? And so if there's anything that I would hope that people would leave confident knowing, it's that we've got the right people in the room who are looking at that risk assessment so that we are not ever in this position again.
Who do you work for?
I work for realtors.
Good, I was just curious, yeah. Yeah, you work for your customer, which is out here, it's not the institution of NAR. I mean, you technically, legally work for NAR, but that was the right answer,
okay.
By the way.
I was wondering if it was a trick question, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, 1 to 10, turn around. 10 is you turn it around. How do you feel about it? Are you confident you could?
Oh, I play to win. I'm here to tell you I play to win. And so we're going to turn this around.
Okay, gang, yeah. I think we know the answer to this, but you gave a very wimpy applause when she came out. What do you think now?
It's a little bit better. I'll take it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.